Two heads, one tail, yang yin. Two tails, one head, yang yang. Three heads, old yang. Two tails, one head, yang yang. Two tails, one head, yang yang. Two heads, one tail, yang yin. We'll be looking at the trigrams and hexagrams through this introductory commentary from Hilary Barrett, I-ming, Walking Your Path, Creating Your Future. Our bottom trigram will be read as broken, solid, solid for our primary hexagram. This is the trigram. Xun, wind or wood. Xun is both wind and living plants, whatever penetrates, spreads, and grows, shaping itself to the space available or shaping that space to its own nature. She is responsive flexibility, sensitively improvising and adapting. Like the wind, she can always find a way through because she never creates any resistance, and so her influence is subtle and gradual, but far-reaching. In the family of trigrams, Xun is the eldest daughter, gentle and submissive. She belongs to the southeast and to late spring and early summer. Our top or outer trigram for our primary hexagram will be read as solid, solid, broken. This is the trigram. Dewy, lake or marsh. Dewy is lake and marsh, abundant energy that teems with life. She is the impulse to communicate, share, and exchange, and delights in both inner and outer conversation. She brings things into circulation and gives them voice. This is the sheer enjoyment of participating in life to the full, expressing ourselves and hearing others and satisfying our desires. Lake is the youngest daughter, spirit of the fertile west and of autumn. Xun, wind or wood above dewy, lake or marsh gives us the hexagram. Well, actually it's dewy, lake or marsh above Xun, wind or wood. My apologies. That would be hexagram 28. Once our third line transforms from old yang to young yin, our secondary hexagram's bottom trigram will be read as broken, solid, broken, which is Kan, water. Kan is deep water, flowing and formless. He is the complement of Li, which is fire and light, dark where Li is bright, unconscious to her sharp lucidity, and represents a more fluid, intuitive, and emotional way of perceiving. This is danger, exposure, and solitude, and the need to respond with courageous self-reliance when confronted by the haunting unknown. Water is the middle sun, situated in the north, associated with midwinter and midnight. So, dewy, lake or marsh above Kan, water, gives us the hexagram for our supporting hexagram of 47. We will get the titles to our hexagrams from Lu I-ming's Taoist I Ching, which he wrote in 1796 as a Taoist adept. And he is my hero. You're my hero, Lu. All right. Hexagram 28, Lu calls excess of the great. Following desires, delighting in externals, inability to control strength. And 47 as our supporting hexagram, which puts our primary hexagram in a broader context and influence of a direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all. Hexagram 47 is called Exhaustion, refining body and mind. To start out, we will get our definitions from Hilary Barrett's I-ming, Walking Your Path, Creating Your Future. To understand our reading when we approach the I Ching to consult the oracle, the question we ask will always have the general context of how can I act in creative relation with the spirits or forces shaping this moment of time. We'll be able to understand the answer once we understand how the parts of our reading work together. The key to understanding a reading is to know your way around its main components, how they fit together, and the different roles they play. If your reading includes changing lines, which ours does, the third line, then you will need to understand primary hexagram, relating hexagram, and changing lines together. The two hexagrams in conversation with one another map out your whole answer. The primary hexagram shows you quite directly what your answer involves. The relating hexagram generally describes what the answer is about for you. It sets the primary hexagram in a broader context, an influence, a direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all. If the two hexagrams map out a landscape for you, then the changing lines stick a pin in that map to say you are here, or at least here's some places you may find yourself. They are the immediate answer to your question. As the most specific, focused part of a reading, their message always takes precedence over all other elements. For example, the primary hexagram might describe a reassuringly secure situation, but a changing line could warn how insecure your position is within it. Primary hexagram for us is 28. Excess of the great. Hilary Barrett calls great exceeding. Key questions. What is overloaded? What have you outgrown? What must you do? Oracle. Great exceeding. The ridgepole warps. Fruitful to have a direction to go. Creating success. When you exceed something, you cross over a line and make a transition. The traditional Chinese house has a structure like an old-fashioned tent. Uprights support horizontal ridgepole, and all the weight of roof and walls is suspended from there. Here, the ridgepole's limits have been exceeded. The supporting framework is no longer adequate to the weight it's asked to bear. This means stress, and also a greatness of spirit and purpose that goes beyond the scope of the situation. It is fruitful to have a direction to go, to reach out imaginatively and explore. Since things cannot hold up as they are, there must be movement. Image. The lake submerges the tree, great exceeding. A noble one stands alone without fear, withdraws from the time without sadness. Water should sustain the tree, but an excess will drown it. Interaction and communication should sustain you, but too much will be overwhelming, drowning the natural growth of your spirit in a flood of demands and expectations. You cannot possibly absorb all these demands and preoccupations into your own identity. You would only lose yourself. So a noble one is not afraid to stand alone, nor is she depressed at leaving society behind. She is moved by an inner purpose and not a product of her environment. Sequence. Great exceeding follows from hexagram 27, nourishment. With no nurturance, it is not possible to act, and so great exceeding follows. Great exceeding is the opposite experience of nourishment, imbalance instead of balance, overloading the structure instead of living within it. But to be capable of the dynamic action great exceeding requires, you need to be well nourished. In our supporting hexagram 47, which puts our primary hexagram in a broader context and influence, a direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all, Hilary Barrett calls confined. Key questions. What if you could only rely on yourself? Who are you when you are alone? Oracle. Confined, creating success. Constancy of a great person, good fortune. Not a mistake. There are words not trusted. The Chinese character for confined or oppressed shows a tree completely encircled by walls, an image of entrapment and isolation. You are cut off and cannot reach out to others. The great person finds good fortune in constancy to an inner ideal. This is the supreme test of character. Whether you can hold to your purpose when there is no encouragement, no confirmation from outside, but only your own inner resources. The lack of outward signs of progress does not mean that you are wrong or that the world is wrong. Rather than resenting the walls, concentrate on the life and growth within them. Do not place too much value on words. They will not provide you with a way out. Neither conversation nor argument, nor your own reasoning and theorizing. Words alone are only circulating ideas. They lack the real personal connection that would make them trustworthy. Image: lake without water, confined. A noble one carries out the mandate, fulfills her aspiration. The lake water has all drained away into the stream below, where there might have been a sparkling center of vitality, communication, and exchange. There is no water left, no energy for communication. Even in such straits, a noble one is still active. The lake water drained downward and inward, merging with the stream in a single strong current. In the same way, a noble one lets her mandate, she is called to do, flow together with the aspiration of her own heart. The two strengthen one another and create an inner momentum that follows through to fulfillment. Sequence. Being confined follows from hexagram 46, pushing upward. Pushing upward and not reaching an end is naturally confining. You drive yourself upward, full of optimism, confidently expecting to reach your goal, and then you don't. And so you find yourself feeling trapped, exhausted by the climb, and also profoundly shaken and betrayed by the way things have failed to work out as they should. Pair. Confined forms a pair with hexagram 48, the well. The well is wholly connected. Confined means meeting together. By its nature, the well is already limitlessly connected, while the confined tree must reach down towards the water table. Reaching inward, you find help. Outwardly, the oppressive walls are unbroken, but what might the inner space open onto? We'll now go back to hexagram 28 to read our changing line 3, which puts a pin in the map to say you are here, or at least here some places you may find yourself. It takes precedence over all other elements. Changing line 3 has the general context of an emerging identity facing a transition with fear or desire, resolution or indecision. Hexagram 28, changing line 3. Ooh. The ridgepole buckles, pitfall. There's too much to bear alone. The ridgepole finds no support and collapses. Perhaps someone failed to see what support was available. Perhaps there was simply none to be found. We'll change things up and next read from I-ming's Taoist I Ching. It is very alchemical in nature. I-ming wrote this in 1796 as a Taoist adept. And he is a badass with a heart of gold. Excess of the great. When the great is excessive, the ridgepole bends. It is good to go somewhere. That is developmental. Explanation. Excess of the great means there is an excess of yang energy. As for the qualities of the hexagram, above is lake, joyous, and below is wind, entering. Going along with what is inside, delighting in externals, following what one desires. When happiness culminates, it produces grief. In the body of the hexagram, inside are 4 yangs and outside are 2 yins. Yang exceeds yin, and yin does not come up to yang. Therefore, it is called excess of the great. This hexagram represents harmonious blending of the medicinal substances, in which fullness requires use of emptiness. It follows on the previous hexagram, nurturance of the great. In nurturance of the great, one is strong yet can stop and be still. Stilling strength, not letting yang energy get too excessive, is properly the means to nurture strength. In spiritual alchemy, the path of the gold elixir, we take 2 times 8 ounces of the polar energies and congeal them into an embryo. It requires the great and small to be undamaged, and both realms be complete. If yang energy is too strong and yin energy too weak, then yin and yang are not in harmony, and you lose the path of continual renewal. When yin culminates, there will be decay, and when yang culminates, there will be deterioration. Going on in this way, the trouble of the ridgepole bending and breaking is inevitable. When the ridgepole snaps, the whole house falls down. In the same way, practitioners of the Tao who promote yang too much, who do not know when enough is enough, who can be great but cannot be small, suffer damage to their spiritual house. If you can proceed breezily without becoming too intense, being harmonious and easygoing without clinging, mastering the ability to adapt to changes, preventing danger and being aware of perils, then firmness and flexibility will correspond. Yin and yang will balance each other. Though great, you can avoid excess, so that it is beneficial to go somewhere. Consummating essence and perfecting life you develop without hindrance. And then our supporting hexagram 47, Exhaustion, which puts our primary hexagram in a broader context and influence the direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all. Oops. Exhaustion. Exhaustion develops the righteous. Great people are fortunate and blameless. If one complains, one will not be trusted. Explanation. Exhaustion means reaching an impasse. In the body of the hexagram, below is water, in which one yang has fallen in between 2 yins. Above is lake, in which one yin is on top of 2 yangs. Both picture mundanity making inroads on the celestial, so that celestial energy does not come through. Therefore it is called exhaustion. As for the qualities of the hexagram, from the midst of danger, water, it produces joy, lake. Joy comes out of danger, so it also has the sense of resolving exhaustion, resolving an impasse. This hexagram represents polishing and refining body and mind. It follows on the previous hexagram, gathering. Gathering involves attaining joy by accord, whereby one gathers together the medicines, goes back to the fundamental, and returns to the original. But if one can only gather in ease and cannot gather in difficulty, this is still inability to accord, inability to rejoice. People who try to practice the Tao can all keep steadfast when they are in easy circumstances, but many of them waver in determination when they are in difficult or perilous situations. They may change their minds because of the pressures of making a living, or they may slack in determination due to illness. Their spirits may flag because of old age, or they may stop work because of obstruction by some obsession. All these are cases in which people do not exert the mind of Tao and are hindered by exhaustion, so they ultimately do not attain the Tao. If the mind is not exhausted, even though the body be exhausted, the path is not at an impasse, even though the situation presents an impasse, and one can be joyful even when in difficulty. Then there is a developmental aspect within exhaustion. But even though being able to rejoice even in difficulty is something people cannot fully attain, and there will inevitably be a point of exhaustion, nevertheless, if they become exhausted where they should not, they will not attain development. This is because the developmental aspect of exhaustion lies in being correct. Dealing with exhaustion correctly, growing correctly, While exhausted, one goes along in harmony with the time. Going along in harmony with the time is possible only for great people imbued with the quality of correct balance. Great people, while being very wise, appear to be ignorant. While being very skillful, they appear inept. Random thoughts do not occur to them, and they cannot be influenced by circumstances. Their conduct is unaffected, and they are not concerned with externals. Not only do they find good fortune wherever they are, they also accord with the order of life and are blameless. As for those whose main concern is food and clothing, they are untrustworthy in an impasse. They will take trouble in hopes of fortune, but as soon as things don't go their way, they show it in their words and expressions, complaining against heaven and blaming people. So blame goes along with them. How can this bring about good fortune? Those who deal with exhaustion and impasse rightly, who are able to be joyful even in difficulty, are great people. Those who are untrustworthy in an impasse, who take trouble only to please themselves, are petty people. It may be the same trouble and the same joy, but the distinction lies in how great people and petty people relate to the trouble and the joy. So those who practice the Tao should by all means maintain rectitude when exhausted and at an impasse. We'll now go back to our changing line 3 of our primary hexagram 47 and read that, which puts a pin in the map to say you are here, or at least here are some places you may find yourself. Takes precedence over all other elements. Again, changing line 3 has the general context, an emerging identity facing a transition with fear or desire, resolution or indecision. Nope, 28, sorry, is our primary hexagram. 28, excess of the great changing line 3. The ridgepole bends, misfortune. Explanation: employing strength strongly, only knowing how to go forward and not how to withdraw, losing the gold elixir after it has been attained. The misfortune of the ridgepole bending is inevitable. This is excessive use of strength. We'll also take a look at the commentary section in the back for each of our hexagrams, which usually is a little bit more alchemical than the rest. Gave I-ming a little more leash to run around. I don't know what the exact case is, but great excess. Lake above, wind below. Moisture destroys wood in excess. Thus, superior people stand alone without fear and leave society without distress. Great excess is excess of the great. Above is lake, associated with moisture. Below is wind, associated with wood. The nature of water is to flow downward. The nature of wood is to float upward. When water rises above wood, it can destroy wood. And when wood descends below water, it can be destroyed by the moisture. This is the image of great excess. What superior people see in this is that just as a great excess of moisture can destroy wood, so can a great excess of talent and intelligence in people destroy their character. Therefore, they take the model of water rising above wood in the sense of standing alone without fear, and take the model of wood descending below water in the sense of concealing themselves and being free from distress. Thus they accomplish the will of a person of exceeding greatness, and perfect the character of a person of exceeding greatness. Because superior people who practice the Tao consider nature and life to be the most important matter, they look down upon all existence as empty of absoluteness. Being like a clear lake, unsullied by the dust of objects, they make use of the phenomena of the world to practice the principles of the Tao, playing a unique tune on an individual harp. Unmoved by the prospects of life or death, they stand aloof of all things without fear. Like the flexibility of wood, they have talent but do not presume upon it. They have intelligence, but do not rely on it. Though simple in appearance, they hold a treasure. Concealing their illumination and nurturing it in obscurity, they do not seek to be known to others. They are hidden in a profound privacy and have no distress. Having no fear means that one cannot be constrained by things, having will and energy far beyond that of others. Having no distress means that errant thoughts do not arise, and one has cultivated development far beyond that of others. Because of having no fear and no distress, one can accomplish that which is rare in the world, and be beyond the perception and beyond the reach of ordinary people. In our supporting hexagram 47, that puts our primary hexagram in a broader context and influence, a direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all. Exhaustion. Lake above, water below. A lake with no water is exhausted. Therefore, superior people use life to the full and achieve their aim. Exhaustion means coming to an end. Above is lake, below is water. This is the lake leaking, the water flowing away, so that there is no water in the lake. This is the image of exhaustion. What superior people see in this is that just as a lake without water is empty, when people lack purpose, their path is at an end. Therefore, they use life to the full to achieve their aim. There is a life that consists of a quantity of energy, and there is a life that consists of meaning of the Tao. The life that is a quantity of energy is created by the universe and is conditioned. The life of meaning of the Tao creates the universe and is primordial. The primordial life is fundamentally something celestial, associated with heaven. Because of mixture with acquired conditioning, it enters the realm of earth and changes into water. This is the one yang in the center of water. Once this celestial yang falls, the jewel of life is hidden and the whole body is completely mundane. There is no exhaustion more exhausting than this. Just wanted to show you what they're showing, the actual hexagrams in here. And when one line leaves here, it enters the broken lines, becomes water. Anyway. Using life to the full means to get to the end of conditioned life. Achieving one's aim means to achieve the primordial life. Establishing this aim to use life to the full, using life to the full to achieve this aim, while the amount of energy depends on something else, creating life depends on oneself. Using the temporal to restore the primordial, ending false life and establishing real life, producing being in the midst of nothingness, seeking life within death, getting through an exhausting impasse is like a lake without water, again being filled with water. And then we will next flip to James Dekorne's Gnostic Book of Changes, which I've left links to in the description box below. He synthesizes several I Ching commentaries. He himself is a practitioner of the Tao, and he gives amazing editor's notes, along with quotes from things like the Kabbalah, or writings on the Kabbalah at least. He calls our primary hexagram 28 critical mass. Other titles might be preponderance of the great, the symbol of great passing, excess, great excess, the passing of greatness, great surpassing, great gains, experience greater than great, greatness and excess, dominance by the mighty, the passing of greatness, excess of the great, law of karma, judgment, leg. Critical mass depicts a weak beam. Under such conditions, it is advantageous to move in any direction whatever. Success is indicated. Blowfold. Excess, the ridgepole sags. It is favorable to have some goal or destination in view. Success. A glance at the hexagram will show that it is too heavy in the middle and too weak at the ends. A number of firm lines is generally auspicious. but there can be too much of a good thing. Cleary 1. When the great is excessive, the ridgepole bends. It is good to go somewhere. That is developmental. When the ridgepole snaps, the whole house falls down. In the same way, practitioners of the Tao who promote yang too much, who do not know when enough is enough, who can be great but cannot be small, suffer damage to their spiritual house. I think we read that in our I-ming commentary. And now the image. Blowfold. This hexagram symbolizes a forest submerged in a great body of water. The superior man, though standing alone, is free from fear. He feels no discontent in withdrawing from the world. This is suggested by the component trigrams. Water is necessary for the nourishment of the trees, but too much of it can cause serious damage. Cleary 2. Moisture destroys wood, developed people, etc. Only when sustained by the power to stand alone without fear and avoid society without distress can learning be firmly rooted and development have a proper basis. Then it is possible to refine and support the mediocre. Confucian commentary. Confucius/Leg. Excess is weakly supported at either end, with weakness in both the lowest and topmost lines. The dynamic lines are in excess, but two of them are in the central positions. The trigrams of flexibility and satisfaction indicate that there will be advantage in moving in any direction whatever. There will be success. Great indeed is the work to be done during this extraordinary time. Leg. Extraordinary times require extraordinary skill in their management. The figure shows two magnetic lines at top and bottom, with four dynamic lines between them, giving the image of a great beam unable to sustain its own weight. Lines 2 and 5 are both dynamic and central, however, and from this and the attributes of the component trigrams, a good auspice is obtained. Notes and paraphrases. Judgment. A stressful situation is best managed with a comprehensive strategy. Or, in the chess game of life, one succeeds by planning several moves in advance. The superior man serves the work by going his own way, regardless of public opinion. Wilhelm titles this hexagram Preponderance of the Great. I prefer R.L. Wing's paraphrase of critical mass as more evocative of the figure's meaning in modern terminology. In critical mass, four dynamic lines lurk inside of the hexagram, weakly contained at top and bottom by two magnetic lines. This energetic concentration could explode in an unpredictable release of force, and hence the judgment tells us to move now. Remember, non-action is also action. To avoid unwanted consequences. Often the outcome is predictable. Be prepared to just walk away if and when that is your best move. Legg's translation of the judgment is, it is advantageous to move in any direction whatever. This is a different message than Wilhelm's. It furthers one to have somewhere to go. Legg's version implies an almost hysterical flight from danger, while Wilhelm's rendition suggests prior intention and planning. The latter interpretation is definitely what is meant here, as confirmed by Cleary's Buddhist commentary. When the transformative path is flourishing, contaminations easily arise. It is best to set up guidelines and regulations. When meditation work is advanced, ignorance is about to dissolve. It is best to exercise the mind skillfully. Coupled with Cleary's translation of the image as developed people stand alone without fear, avoid society without distress, the idea is that one should follow one's best intuition and ignore popular illusions, political correctness, or inner fears. Psychologically, conventional thinking, socially conditioned reflexes, knee-jerk responses, etc. During a time of critical mass, pay close attention to direction from the self to preserve the work. This is not the time to follow the crowd. Sometimes this can mean that you are obliged to go it alone, one of the work's frequent tests. A quote from G. Knight in A Practical Guide to Kabbalistic Symbolism. The gulf is something that has to be leaped, and leaped alone, stripped of all hindering burdens in faith. It is thus one of the crisis points of spiritual progress because of the great temptation to turn back from the unknown to the apparent safety of known things, and to succumb to this temptation is to lose all the fruits of past endeavor. Suggestions for meditation. Compare the judgment and image of this hexagram with those of hexagram number 32, consistency. Anthony, we must regain modesty through the effort to rid ourselves of strong elements that cause us to press forward. The strong elements may exist in someone else, causing them to assault us with their fear, mistrust, or doubt. Strong refers to impetuous movement to resolve what is ambiguous. We can meet the challenge by remaining detached and letting things go through their changes. To be truly rich is to remain modest. To be truly powerful is to remain reticent. And then our supporting hexagram, which puts our primary hexagram in a broader context and influence, a direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relation to it all. Oppression is what James Dekorne calls it. Other titles might be exhaustion, the symbol of repression and confinement, adversity, weariness, confining, entangled, hardship, depression, tiresome restriction, dried up. A quote from D.F. Hook, actions speak louder than words. Judgment, leg. Oppression means that successful progress is still possible. The perseverance of the truly great man brings good fortune without error, but if he relies on words, no one will believe them. Blofeld, adversity leading to success thanks to persistence in a righteous course. Good fortune for the truly great and freedom from error. Though words be spoken, they will not inspire confidence. Great refers to high moral qualities. This hexagram is of evil omen for most people, but success can be won through tremendous persistence in doing what is right. Ritsuma/Karcher, confining, growing. This hexagram describes your situation in terms of restriction and distress. It emphasizes that turning inward through accepting enclosure is the adequate way to handle it. The image, leg, an abyss beneath the marsh that drains its water, the image of oppression. Thus the superior man will sacrifice his life to attain his purpose. Ritsuma/Karcher, marsh without stream, confining. A Chun-Tzu, or chief son or superior person, uses involving fate to release purpose. Clary 1, a lake with no water is exhausted. Therefore, superior people use life to the full and achieve their aim. When people lack purpose, their path is at an end. Therefore, they use life to the full to achieve their aim. Using life to the full means to get to the end of conditioned life. Achieving one's aim means to achieve the primordial life. Using the temporal to restore the primordial, ending false life and establishing real life, producing being in the midst of nothingness, seeking life within death, getting through an exhausting impasse is like a lake without water again being filled with water. We read that in Louis Ming's, but I love it. Clary 2, developed people accomplish their will by living out their destiny. Developed people only live out their destiny. They do not willingly try to avoid following and accepting it. Being strong and balanced, they are able to be joyful even in danger. This is the will that is up to oneself. Developed people intend to accomplish their will and do not vacillate just because they run into problems. Wu, the marsh has no water, this is hardship. Thus the Chun-Tzu, or chief son or superior person, or sage, prepared to dedicate his life to fulfill his commitments. A marsh devoid of water is like a man deprived of his intellectual pursuits. This is unacceptable to a Chun-Tzu. He would rather fight to the end than surrender to idiocy. Commentary. Fucking love that. Confucius/Leg. In oppression, we see the dynamic lines covered and obscured by the magnetic. We see the attribute of perilousness in the lower trigram going on to cheerfulness in the upper. Who but the superior man is still able to advance, although straitened by circumstances? The central position of the dynamic lines explains the good fortune of the great man who is firm and correct. As regards speech-making, to be fond of argument or persuasion is the way to be reduced to extremity. Leg. The written Chinese character of oppression presents us with the picture of a tree within an enclosure. A plant, according to Williams, fading for want of room. A tree, according to Tai Tung, not allowed to spread its branches. The image conveys the idea of being straitened and distressed, and the hexagram indicates how skillful management may relieve it. The two central places in the figure are occupied by dynamic lines, but line 2 is confined between 1 and 3, which are magnetic, and line 5, the ruler, as well as 4, his minister, are covered by the magnetic 6th line. These conditions indicate that repression of good men by adversity. The repression of good men by adversity. The Konghasi editors imply that actions and not words are what are required in this case. Perilousness is the attribute of the lower trigram and cheerfulness that of the upper. The superior man, no matter how straitened, remains master of himself and pursues his principled intent. The idea of speech-making is found in the upper trigram, one of the attributes of which is the mouth, or speech, as well as pleased satisfaction. The pleading of the oppressed party still tries to make others pleased with him. Literally translated, the first sentence of the image reads, "A marsh with no water is oppression." Chuhasi says, "The water descending and leaking away, the marsh above will become dry." Anthony, our belief in the ruling power as beneficial is shaken by doubt. This lack of steadfastness is a problem because it obstructs acceptance and its corrective power. We often receive this hexagram when we feel tired. The oppressiveness of doubt exhausts our inner resources. Notes and paraphrases, judgment. With enough will, success can be won. Actions speak louder than words, i.e., the answer lies beyond the realm of reason and logic. Intuition furthers. The superior man stakes everything he's got on his will to succeed. In oppression, we have the image of a dry lake bed. Anyone who has ever seen alkali flats in the desert can easily understand this metaphor for oppression. Almost nothing can live in such an environment. The following hexagram, the well, is an upside-down image of oppression, depicting the opposite case of an unending source of nourishment flowing from deep beneath the surface of the earth. A comparison of these two figures will reveal a great deal about the meaning of each. To be under oppression, then, is to be cut off from all sustenance. Although there is water down below, it is presently inaccessible, and there is no nourishing flow or inner forces to the surface. There is no nourishing flow of inner forces to the surface. This is a common, inevitable, and potentially defeating experience for anyone doing serious inner work. A quote from Thomas Clary in the Taoist I Ching. People who try to practice the Tao can all keep steadfast when they are in easy circumstances, but many of them waver in determination when they are in difficult or perilous situations. They may change their minds because of the pressures of making a living, or they may slack in determination due to illness. Their spirits may flag because of old age, or they may stop work because of obstruction by some obsession. All these are cases in which people do not exert the mind of Tao and are hindered by exhaustion, so they ultimately do not attain the Tao. Obviously, this is a dangerous situation, and we are told how to cope with it in the Confucian commentary, where it is observed that the lower trigram of peril goes on to the upper trigram of cheerfulness. These two trigrams are found in reversed sequence in hexagram number 60, restrictive regulations, where a cheerful attitude is described as absolutely essential for the furtherance of the work. The observations made there also apply here, and we see the superior man thereby enabled to advance under conditions that would utterly defeat lesser individuals. This cheerfulness cannot be underestimated. When it comes naturally and isn't forced, it is a gift of grace. Suddenly, one is enabled to face the most incredible hardships with a light heart. It isn't that you no longer care. You still do the best you can to further the work, but you do it with bemused detachment. A quote from C. Ponce and Kabbalah. The one thing the Jewish mystics never lost sight of was the suffering experienced in the arena of the profane. They did not retreat from this suffering, but sought instead to find meaning in it by living it. This is the core of mysticism. The temple in which the sacred marriage takes place is the world. Lines 2 and 5 specifically mention sacrifice, an important concept in the I Ching. Sacrifices mentioned in lines 17.6, 45.2, 46.2, 46.4, 47.2, 47.5, and 63.5, and in the judgment of Hexagram 20. Note that in each case, sincerity is specifically cited as essential to success. Sincere, 1, marked by genuineness as a free of dissimulation, not hypocritical, real, true, honest. Very often the sincerity of our sacrifices involves following the dictates of the work, whether we fully understand them or not. Much that takes place in the work is incomprehensible to ego consciousness. For example, changes often occur within the psyche which we only experience as strange dreams. Yet somehow, perhaps months later, we suddenly realize that we no longer act in a certain way or have lost interest in something that used to be of compelling importance. Our sacrifices are necessary for these changes to take place, even if they don't immediately make sense to us. A quote from the Bhagavad Gita. With sacrifice shall you nourish the gods, and may the gods nourish you. Thus nourishing one another, you will obtain the highest good. The gods, nourished by sacrifice, will bestow on you the enjoyments you desire. He is verily a thief who enjoys the things that they give without offering to them anything in return. Each of Cleary's Taoist and Buddhist commentaries provides valuable insights into how much courage is required to follow the dictates of the work at its more advanced levels. Take comfort that others before you have persevered and survived. Developed people accomplish their will by living out their destiny. We'll go back to our changing line 3 in our primary hexagram 28. That puts a pin in the map to say you are here, or at least here are some places you may find yourself. Takes precedence over all other elements. Changing line 3, again, has the general context. An emerging identity facing a transition with fear or desire, resolution or indecision. Changing line 3 of hexagram 28. Move. The third line dynamic shows a beam that is weak. There will be evil. Wilhelm/Baines, the ridgepole sags to the breaking point, misfortune. Wu, the beam warps, foreboding. Confucian commentary, Confucius/Leg, no help can be given to the condition thus represented. Wilhelm/Baines, the misfortune of the sagging and breaking of the ridgepole is due to its finding no support. Blofeld, the misfortune of being without adequate support. Ritsema/Karcher, not permitted to use possessing, bracing indeed. Cleary 2, there is no way to help. Wu, because no support will help. Leg, the third line is dynamic in a dynamic place and confident in his own strength, but his correlate line 6 is magnetic. Alone, he is unequal to the extraordinary strain. Any attempt to sustain the broken beam will have no effect in supporting the roof. Notes and paraphrases, Sue. The man becomes overconfident in his limited strength. He rushes ahead in opposition to advice from those in a position to help. This leads to the loss of voluntary support. His burdens increase and he proves unequal to the task. Wing. You are inclined to force your way forward when, in fact, there are obstacles that cannot be overcome in this way. Even worse, you cannot accept advice from others because it is not what you wish to hear. Misfortune will inevitably follow. Editor, this is the weak beam referred to in the judgment. In the metaphor of Wing's title of critical mass, the situation is about to detonate. Quote from Ecclesiastes 10:18, owing to neglect, the roof tree gives way. For want of care, the house lets in the rain. James Dekorne breaks changing line 3 down into 3 possible succinct definitions, A, B, and C. A, the situation is unstable. B, you have no support in the matter at hand. And C, your assumptions have no foundation. We'll now wrap things up with a randomly card-drawn chapter from the Tao Te Ching. So our primary hexagram, 28, excess of the great, or critical mass, shows the ridgepole of the house bending and about ready to break. And confined is what Hilary Barrett called hexagram 47, or what did I-ming call it? Exhaustion. Showed a walled-in tree that couldn't access the moisture very well. Kind of, I've said this before, but I think of like a bonsai tree. In that kind of a situation where it's really, really struggling. Anyway, you put the two together and you add changing line 3 in there, and it just says there's basically the ridgepole is breaking. There's no means of stopping that from happening. It's just inauspicious. And yet still in I-ming's commentaries, or the Taoist I Ching, showed that, that's too many, showed that, I know, babe, I'm just reading my Tao Te Ching and I'm done. Love you. Shows that there's still beneficial ways that the sage can act in such cases. Let's get this one. 77 in the Tao Te Ching. Oh God. There we go. My copy is from Jiafu Fang and Jane English. Has pretty cool pictures in it. 77. 77. The Tao of heaven is like the bending of a bow. The high is lowered and the low is raised. If the string is too long, it is shortened. If there is not enough, it is made longer. The Tao of heaven is to take from those who have too much and give to those who do not have enough. Man's way is different. He takes from those who do not have enough to give to those who already have too much. What man has more than enough and gives it to the world? Only the man of Tao. Therefore the sage works without recognition. He achieves what has to be done without dwelling on it. He does not try to show his knowledge. Love ya. Meow.